Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about a indie house that I've been kind of getting into, thanks basically to the kindness of you guys. If you've been kind of following my channel, my scent of the day, what I wear and talk about, you know that within the last month or so, I wore this, which is Tiger Lust from the house of Ensar Oud, which is a house, and this fragrance I was actually extremely taken with. It was sent to me by one of my perfume god people. This very kind discovery atomizer with a lot of juice. This stuff is very expensive. And I went to go buy a bottle because I was literally just going to go buy a bottle. I loved it so much, and I saw the price and I went, nope, not going to do it. It's just, Ensar's pricing is insane to me. He has, I think taken it a little bit too far. And I just, as much as I would love to have a bottle of that, and I'd love to have a bottle of N⁰2, that would be a blind buy, but I think it would be a safe blind buy since it's a leathery scent, and I love leather. But today we're testing out, the reason I'm bringing this house up is we're testing a sample, a decant sent to me by a different perfume god person. And this one is called N⁰2. So Ensar Oud #2, and this is the pure Parfum version. And I've been wearing it today for the last 5 or 6 hours now. So I've got the 5 or 6 hour dry down here, and I just did a fresh spray within the last 30 minutes or so on my right hand. You can still see the sheen that it leaves because it is a pure Parfum. Now, this fragrance, well, first of all, before I go into this, my experience, my knowledge and understanding of some of these niche house, indie house, I should say, breakdowns has grown dramatically in the last year or so. Earlier this year, Russian Adam discovered my perfume channel, and he sent me a bunch of stuff to smell. He sent me stuff like Chinese Oud, War and Peace, which I loved enough that I actually went and bought a bottle of War and Peace. Civet de Nuit, he sent me. That's the very first Sultan Pasha fragrance I've ever smelled. Manly, which is the very first Aton. His name's Anton. It's his stepbrother, a Russian Adam stepbrother who has a brand, and I did an early impression on one of his fragrances. It's Aton Perfumes. Here's his stepbrother's brand, by the way, Aton Perfumes. I did an early impression on one of these with a beautiful, highly aged patchouli note. And Antiquity, which this is one I would love to pick up a bottle of. Antiquity is definitely on my full bottle list, as is Oud Zen. Oud Zen is the other one that's on my full bottle list. And so if you've been kind of following my journey over the last year, you could say, because this channel isn't even a year old, around Christmas time, it'll hit the 1 year mark. You kind of saw my progression with these indie houses like Arige Ladore. Sorry, I keep dropping these everywhere. I don't know where to put them. They don't stand up very well. Like Arige Ladore, like Bortnikov, and now the House of Ensar. I'm starting to know the House of Ensar better, and as much as I would love to dive into the house further, they are extremely cost prohibitive. I'm just going to put these back because they're just going to go everywhere. You're going to hear me playing with them, and it's going to take away from my talking about the fragrance we want to talk about today, which is Ensar Oud N⁰2. And the reason that I'm bringing all of this up is I went through this progression with the House of Arige Ladore, and it really almost opened a window into the indie oud, the houses that use real oud, real musk, real ambergris, the stuff that you're not going to get in modern fragrances that are under the thumb of IFRA. Even if you spend $3,000 on Roja's Haut Luxe, which I wore as my scent of the day yesterday, they're just completely different experiences when you're talking about real oud, real musk, real ambergris, right? That kind of stuff. And one of the fragrances from the House of Arige Ladore is a fragrance called Oud Picante. And if you watched my videos from the House of Arijla, or if you haven't, you can easily go find, I made an entire playlist on the house, so you can go watch them all in a row if you'd like. But Oud Picante is the one that I did not like. This one struck me as having this extreme amount of spices. You know, it puts fragrances like L'air du Desert Marocain to shame. The amount of spices in Oud Picante in the opening was too much for me. And you got a lot of spices like cumin, clove, nutmeg, turmeric, you know, those kind of heavy spice bazaar spices. And, you know, if you watch my talking about this, at first I said, whoa, when I sprayed this on, this is not for me. And then I kind of took a step back and said, wait a minute, why am I saying that? Because this is different. It is unique. There's Borneo oud in here, and Bengal sandalwood and Muhuhu wood, which I talked about in that review. You can go check that out if you'd like. But there was also this like costus, animalic, like dirty animal, you know, I said like bison or water buffalo grazing in the plains of Africa, you know, that just unwashed body, animalic smell that just bothered me when you mixed it in with the spices, okay? The reason I bring this up is Russian Adam created this fragrance in 2017. And to my surprise, after I put up that review, or initial impression, we'll say, he came back and said, you know what's funny is that's one of our best sellers. I mean, that thing sold out like that. People loved it, that kind of stuff. So it just goes to show how different noses think differently about things. But I did not like that fragrance. And I would much rather, if I was going to spend my own hard-earned money on another Arijla, which there's a bunch of them that I now want. I want Santal Galore. I want Antiquity. I want Oud Zen. You know, I'd love to smell Oud Luwak, those kind of things. It wouldn't be Oud Picante. That would be towards the back end of the list. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that came out in 2017. In 2018, Ensar Oud released EO number 2. And to my mind, there is a definite link between the two. Definite, 100%. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say Oud Picante is like a blueprint that Ensar Oud used when creating EO2. That's how similar in design, okay? Imagine you're an architect and you have a blue paper floor plan and you're sketching all of this out, right, on your floor plan. Oud Picante was the basic pencil sketch, and then Ensar Oud filled in the blanks with EO number 2. In my mind, that's how they are linked. Now, obviously, there are differences. In Oud Picante, I mentioned there's Borneo oud. In EO number 2, there's no Borneo oud. There is a oud from Papua oud, Papua oud, P-A-P-U-A. I'm guessing that's like Papua New Guinea oud, maybe. That's where it comes from. Excuse me whilst I hydrate real quick. Back to the Fiji today. And so in the opening of EO number 2, which I have the opening right here, like I said, there's a distinct link between Oud Picante and EO number 2. However, I will say that from my, impressions and what I remember of Oud Picante, this was even more challenging to me. Oud Picante was more animalic. It had that costus note, which is not in EO2. And there are 4 types of sandalwood in EO number 2. And there's Papua sandalwood. Again, I'm guessing it's like Papua New Guinea, but I don't know. Papua sandalwood, Mysore sandalwood. And if they say Mysore, they're probably really using Mysore sandalwood. Australian sandalwood, and Timor sandalwood, which again, I'm not familiar with Timor or Papua sandalwood. I have smelled the actual Australian sandalwood and the actual Mysore sandalwood thanks to the 50 ingredient set that Russian Adam sent me, which was very kind of him. One of the kindest gifts anyone's ever sent to me in the fragrance world. And so let me take you through kind of the scent, because it definitely will remind you of Oud Picante. If you love Oud Picante, EO2 is on your must sniff list. If you hate Oud Picante, like I didn't like it, it's not that I hated it, it's just that it was extremely challenging for me. I didn't enjoy wearing it. And I kind of feel the same way about this, even though I think that maybe some of the really harsh aspects of Oud Picante have been turned down a little bit in EO #2. It still has that same scent DNA, if you will. And since these are so expensive, I mean, you'd be a fool to pay $1,000 and blind buy this for 30 or 50 mils. You know, it's would not be a smart move. So that's one of the reasons that I like to do these videos. I like to kind of put my thoughts out there. I have at least enough of a fragrance dictionary, you know, enough of a memory of different scents that I've tried that I can make heads or tails of what's what, and at least give you an idea whether it's worth your time to kind of sample or not. So when you first spray EO #2, there is this definite mixture of cumin and turmeric, which I really dislike. Again, instantly, I don't like it. As soon as I sprayed it, actually, as soon as I smelled the atomizer, I had an idea, but also when you smell the atomizer of Tiger Lust, this also smells a little bit animalic. So I was hoping, okay, this is, because I absolutely love this Tiger Lust. So I was like, okay, maybe this, once you spray, will go in a different direction than what I'm getting from the atomizer. Nope. It went 100% cumin, turmeric. There is a couple very interesting notes listed. There's rosewood, which normally I absolutely love rosewood in a composition. Rosewood is one of my favorite little additions to have to a fragrance. And I've told this story before, but growing up, I was raised Catholic. And my mother on Easter used to make me pray the rosary with her. And she had this rosewood rosary from the Holy Land. And rosewood has this very distinct smell. And so I have some serious scent memories linked, spending time with my mother on Easter and stuff like that. But the rosewood here doesn't give me that. It's almost like it's drowned out by all the other notes. And that's a great way to describe EO #2. It is constructed in a way where everything just feels kind of like it's drowned out. You know what I mean? Like, even if there is beautiful Mysore sandalwood in the base, it's almost like it's boxed out, you know? It's so busy. This fragrance is so busy and there's so much going on that none of the ingredients really get to shine. And if you remember my review of Santal Galore, which is a real Mysore sandalwood scent, I also said that, you know, I said that even though there's a lot going on, the Mysore in this is never drowned out. It's never overshadowed. It's allowed to shine. Here, it's not. It's not allowed to shine in EO #2 because there's just so much going on. It's such a busy plate. Your plate is filled with everything that you just can't get to the good stuff down at the bottom of the plate. That's the way that it feels to me, because there are beautiful notes in here. There's real oud. There's real Mysore sandalwood. There's real Siberian musk in here. In the dry down, it does start to come out a little bit more. You can kind of get a glimpse, you know, almost like you're trying to see the sun, and the clouds kind of move away for just a second, and you get a glimpse, and they move right back in front of it. That's the way that this fragrance develops for me. And, you know, after a couple hours, one thing that I do really like is, so the fragrance starts out in this way where, just like Oud Picante, you get that massive amounts of spice, massive spice. And it really never goes away. It does dissipate as the hours go by. It does take a back seat. That heavy oud, that heavy cumin, turmeric, you know, spice, clove, spice that is so overdone in both Oud Picante and EO #2. Maybe there's some cardamom in here. There's no cardamom listed. There is cardamom listed in Oud Picante. There's also a note called spikenard in Oud Picante, which is not listed in EO #2, and spikenard can also give off some animalic facets. But what ends up happening is, I mean, you're just hit with this, and even though it doesn't have that ultra dirty, wet animal, like with Oud Picante, I mentioned it has that wet animal vibe, right? In EO #2, you don't get the wet animal vibe as much, so I don't think it's as I don't think it's as challenging on a scale. If you were ranking them number-wise, you know, I would put Oud Picante challenging-wise maybe 1 or 2 notches ahead of EO #2, but it basically goes down the same path. But there are some things that I like about this fragrance. Number one is a couple hours in, out comes this beautiful smoky vibe. And if you've ever been to like a Catholic church, right? The way that they burn their incense, and the priest has that incense burner, right? That he walks around and shakes everywhere, and the incense rises and stuff like that. And it lingers. And sometimes if it's, if the heat on those burners is turned up too much, it'll almost smell like they're burning the incense too much, like the incense is blackened, that kind of vibe. You get some of that after a couple hours. After that spiciness starts to recede, you get hit with this lingering, lingering in the air, almost like they burned it too fast incense smell. But I like that. I like that feature of this fragrance. And there's even some of that in Tiger Lust. I'm starting to think maybe that's a little bit of an Ensar DNA, if you will. And I like the way that's done. Even though there's no incense note listed, it could be the oud too. It could be the Papau oud. I don't know. Excuse me. But there is this this burnt incense type vibe that kind of begins to emerge. It starts to kind of boil up. And the spicy mixture of cumin, clove, oud, and there's a dirty civet note too in EO number 2. They really do linger, even though they start to kind of progress to the background. It never truly goes away. It just lingers on. You know what I mean? Those notes just linger on, even though you start to get other notes to the forefront. And so if you watch my initial impression of Oud Picante, I mentioned that the spices remind me of almost like an Arabic breakfast. So if you've ever had Arabic breakfast with zayt and za'atar, which is like a olive oil and this spice mixture, allspice and sesame seeds and all this stuff, and they will dip the Arabic bread into the oil and dip it into the spices and then eat it as part of their breakfast, right? Oud Picante gave me that vibe. This fragrance, EO number 2, interestingly enough, also has a food element to it, and it's listed as basmati rice. So basmati rice is listed in the top with the cumin and the pink pepper, rosewood, coriander. And if you are familiar with Indian food, and most people are, at least to some extent, some more than others, but basmati rice has this spicy, nutty, almost like floral vibe compared to just regular white rice. It's also much more aromatic. Basmati rice is much more aromatic than just regular white rice. And on top of that, another food note, if you will, that's listed in this is black tea. Okay, so you get the basmati rice, you get the black tea, and you get this huge amount of spice. I mean, spice overdose, at least for me. And the fact that this came out 1 year after Oud Picante, really makes me think that Russian Adam is the one that is probably the most artistic of the creators, because most of the stuff that I smell from Russian Adam, he kind of goes his own way. I'm seeing people tend to try to copy Russian Adam more than the other way around. And that's what I'm getting in EO number 2. Yes, he's done his own thing. There are some differences, but it really feels like Oud Picante kind of trailed the way, and Ensar followed along. So Ensar followed Russian Adam in the creation of EO number 2. And people may very well love both of these. I don't care for either of them. It's not something I would spend my money on, let's put it that way. There are other DNAs from these houses that I like much more. But what's interesting about this food kind of combo, if you will, basmati rice and black tea, is that when you mix it with the spices, with Oud Picante, I mentioned that it gives me this Arabic breakfast vibe. With EO number 2, it gives me this Indian lunch vibe, okay? And Obviously, if you've ever had Indian food, they use a lot of basmati rice. Pakistan, India, that part of the world, it's very popular there. And so imagine you're having basmati rice and you're at some gigantic spice bazaar. And I said this with oud picante too. But if you've ever seen pictures of like the spice bazaars in Morocco, or, you know, someplace like that where they have those outdoor bazaars and, you know, the very colorful spices are lined up. You get the red, the yellow, the brown, all that stuff, you know, in a row in one spice area where you can just go and kind of take your own spices. That's the vibe of EO#2. But instead of with an Arabic breakfast, with Indian lunch, because of the basmati rice and that black tea. And as the fragrance dries, you start to get more and more and more of those sandalwood notes begin to come to the forefront. So if you remember, I mentioned there are 4 sandalwood notes in here. 4. And what's interesting is, even though there's no muhuhu wood, which is a tree grown, which is a wood grown in Africa, and I talked a little bit about it in the oud picante early impression, but they'll use it for carvings and stuff like that over there, but it has a very distinct smell. This starts to smell like there's muhuhu wood in it as well, even though there's not. Unless Timor sandalwood is also known as muhuhu, I don't know. But I'm not familiar enough with the different types of sandalwood to say, yes, for sure, this is this or this is that. But even in the dry down, it starts to get closer and closer to oud picante. However, you do get glimpses of some of these beautiful ingredients start to kind of come out after that heavy spice overdose subsides. It never goes away. Again, it just kind of goes to the background and watches. But in the dry down, you start to get some of that beautiful fuzzy Siberian musk, right? Almost like you can smell what the deer eats, that kind of musk. Beautiful, absolutely stunning. And then you get a little glimpse of that Mysore sandalwood. And again, the Mysore is supposed to be buttery, it's supposed to be spongy, and it's supposed to have like a little bit of this lemony quality to it. And maybe even a little bit of floral aspects, because Mysore has those red little flowers that grow all over the bark of the tree. And you get little hints of that, but it's crowded. It's like stuff is in your way. Stuff is obscuring your vision. You want some of that stuff to get out of the way. So you can smell some of the beautiful ingredients in here. You can smell the real oud, the real rose. There's Turkish rose and Himalayan rose in this. But it is very hard to get to that. You know what I mean? Like, I just wish I could push some of those spices out of the way and get to the beautiful rose, get to the jasmine sambac, get to the Mysore sandalwood. Even the civet in here doesn't do it for me. For some reason, the way that these compositions are made, oud picante, which again I think is the trailblazer, and then EO#2, which obviously took notes from Russian Atom, you know, I don't like the way that the ingredients come together to create this smell. It bothers me. There's something about it that is not very pleasant. I can appreciate the ingredients underneath. You know, if I could just pick out some of those ingredients, if my nose can focus on, say, the Turkish rose, or the Mysore sandalwood, or the real Siberian musk, or there's even a little bit of labdanum in here. But the labdanum is not the kind I like. I like my labdanum to be, you know, rich and resinous and in your face. Like, I like the way that Le Lion does labdanum. I like the way Roja's Houtlux does labdanum. I like the way the Zoo Everlasting does labdanum. You know, I like the way Sahara Noir by Tom Ford, which is discontinued. I need a bottle of that. Does labdanum. That's how I prefer my labdanum. Here, you know, everything kind of plays a role, but nothing is allowed to really shine. It all just blends together. And when you try to pick an ingredient out, others get in the way. This is a disappointment for me. I will tell you that. This would not be, you know, if I spent $1,000 on 30 or 50 mLs of this, I would be very disappointed. Yeah, I mean, this is, for me, it's not for me. It may be for others, but for me, it's not. It's just the way that the spices and the combination of of notes come together. Again, I don't think it's as animalic as Oud Picante. So if you love this style, you know, if this is like a grail style fragrance for you, Oud Picante is a little bit more, it's a little more animalic. I think it's a little bit more challenging from what I remember. This seems almost a little bit more wearable, I would say. You know, if I was going to spend my money on this, to be honest with you, I'd probably try to buy Oud Picante since it came first. But, you know, EO2 it's a good fragrance. I'm not saying it's a bad fragrance, but for me, this combination of spices and, you know, the way that it's all blended together, it just doesn't work for me. I mean, I knew almost as soon as I sprayed it on where this was going. Instantly reminded me of Oud Picante. And what's interesting is if you go watch my review of this, I mentioned there's nothing I've ever smelled that smells like this. So you have to give Russian Adam credit for creating something unique, right? Well, if I would have smelled this first, I would have said the same thing, because this really is a unique DNA. I don't like it, but at least they're trying to do something different, you know, from the average, from the pack. They're trying to do something different. And that brings me full circle to pricing, because if you're going to get a very similar fragrance and Russian Adam sells his 30 mils for, you know, $250 US, and Ensar sells his for double, triple, quadruple the price. I don't know what EO2 goes for in pure Parfum nowadays. All I know is that Ensar's pricing is outrageous. I feel like Russian Adam really leans on, you know, he leans on who he is, and he leans on his religious beliefs that he doesn't want to overcharge people. Because what's interesting about it, I'm a capitalist, okay? I grew up in America, and I'm a believer in capitalism. And when you see a Russian Adam fragrance go from the Arizadori website at $250, $300 being sold, and instantly go to eBay for $800, $900, $1,000, that means that that is what the open market price is. If people are willing to pay that, he could sell it for that. People would buy it. The same people who are spending $1,000 on Ensar Oud would spend $1,000 on Russian Adam's creations. They just would. That's just the way it is. That's the way the open market works. But he chooses not to do that. And I really respect him for that. I think that's a big, you know, it takes a very special kind of person to say, I'm not going to put the prices as absolute high as I could, you know, like some of these brands. I'm not going to put the pricing here because I want more people to be able to experience my fragrance, not just the ultra rich. I want people of every economic class to be able to experience my fragrance. He's going to have some new fragrances coming out from his N⁰2 collection that are under $100. You know, I have to, you know, take my hat off to that behavior. That is very rare nowadays. Ensar went the capitalist model. He went the model that says, I'm going to charge absolutely as much as the market's willing to bear. If there are people who are multimillionaires who are willing to spend $1,800 on 50 mils, guess what? That's what I'm putting it at. If there's $1,500 bottles, that's where it's going. And you don't see Russian Adam doing that, although I think he could, because the quality, you know, to me, there's no additional quality of the Ensar Oud over Arizadori. Zero. I'm not seeing any quality. Someone was trying to say, oh, but Ensar uses the late Sultan bin Qaboos's rose oil. So what? You know, he had to buy that rose from somewhere too. And if it's the royal grade and if it's the best rose, who cares if it was in his collection or it came directly from the fields? You know, I don't care about that. That seems like a gimmick to me, or a little bit of a gimmick to me. Obviously, the Sultan's going to probably have the best stuff. But he was a fragrance lover, and so he bought a bunch of fragrances, just like we do. He bought a bunch of oils, a bunch of fragrances. Just because it's in his collection, is it worth Ensar charging 4 times the price? I don't think so. I mean, personally, no, I would not buy this. Not. Absolutely not. Now, if I could find this in a full 50 mil for half price of what he's charging, would I be interested? Maybe. But I am not paying retail for this stuff. It's ridiculous. I'm not gonna support that kind of behavior. I think it's a little bit predatory. You know, I think he's kind of preying on the people who are willing to, but there are people out there that are willing to pay it, obviously, or he wouldn't have such a thriving business. I mean, his name holds weight. You have to give him that. You know, his name holds weight. And, but for me, it's a great experience. I wouldn't be able to experience this and do these videos on fragrances this rare and this expensive if it wasn't for the kindness of you guys. And you know who you two are who sent this to me. Perfume Godfather 1 and 2. And so thank you for sending these to me. It's been a joy to get to know the house. Tiger Lust is full bottle, 100% for me, 100%. I just wouldn't spend that kind of money. It's just, you know, his pricing is just insane. But EO number 2, pass. This is a pass for me. This is I'm glad to smell it. I'm glad to be able to put up some content about it so you kind of know what you're dealing with. But unless you are into some of the most heavy spices you can imagine, this is going to be a challenging one for people. I mean, I know it's been out now for 4 years or whatever it is, but this is going to be very tough. Even for the seasoned noses, I think this DNA, Oud Picante and EO number 2, are very challenging DNAs, very challenging. And even if there's some amazing ingredients in here, again, they don't shine. You don't smell the beautiful sandalwood. You just can't, you can't get to it. You know what I mean? And so, because of that, I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worth it. Even if it was half price, even if it was a quarter of the price, I wouldn't buy EO number 2. Just because there's so many other indie fragrances now that I am kind of hunting. And so that's my take on it. I mean, if you have experience with EO number 2, I would love to know if you agree or disagree with me. You know, for me, I would just rather spend that money, even if it was $250 or $500 elsewhere. I'd rather buy old vintages. I'd rather buy, you know, other Russian Atom fragrances that I like, or Bortnikovs, or, you know, there's so many other indie houses that I could kind of go to that EO number 2 is a pass. It's a head shaker. I'm glad I got to try it, but no, would not buy a bottle of this. So, thanks for watching, everybody. If you've experienced with the House of Ensar or with EO number 2, I would love to hear your feedback and thoughts. I might try to do a live stream today, now that I have some time. We'll see if Rich wants to kind of join or something like that and just talk shop on some of our favorite topics, which is other fragrances. So, cheers, guys. Thanks for watching. Love to see your faces in the comments, and hopefully see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye now.